because you've got to the end of my list. So,
yay!
Congratulations. Okay, so here's a practical question, because I'm learning and I'm like doing the little research, and I have been on TikTok, and like I have done like some research and reading, and I talked to you and all that stuff. One thing I've noticed is smudging, to like do different things, and that's its own kettle of fish. But there always seems to have to be a window open or a door, or what's the deal with like windows having to be open and smoke, and what's the thing with windows? Why windows?
Okay. No. I think a lot of this, like, it really comes back to people imposing rules where they don't need to be. The principle of having a window open is that if you're, like, say you're cleansing your apartment, it's like sweeping. You can actually do it with a broom, actually. That's a viable use of a witch's broom, but it's like sweeping. You like want to clean all the stuff out and send it out the door and then close the door behind it. Like, that's where the like open window concept comes from. That's not always practical, and it's not always like I guess it comes back to what you believe. So if you believe that the only way that the negativity and the unwelcome spirits are going to leave your apartment is if there is a window for them to go out that you can shut behind them, then that's the only way it's going to work. But if you believe that smudging your apartment and maybe sealing it with a sigil or with an incantation is the only way that you're going to keep spirits from like re-entering your apartment, then that's how it's going to work. Some people see a pink candle and think love. Some people see a pink candle and think Pepto-Bismol vomit. So it's really personal. The concept is that you want to send things away and then create a barrier. It's like a symbol. It's like a physical symbol, but you can do it energetically. You don't have to have an open window.
Makes sense. I always imagine it like that Febreze commercial where the Febreze traps the odors in. I might watch too much television. Okie doke. Here's another practical one that goes towards like your elemental stuff and also like what kind of witch are you and all that jazz. Can I identify with like one main element or one main type of witchcraft, but have a nice relationship with another? Can I be poly-witchcraft, poly-witchery? Can I have an open relationship with my magic?
Yeah, yes, yeah. There really aren't any rules about that. I think the only time you're gonna have issues with that is if like you're doing things that are contradictory. So if you're dealing with angels and demons, they might not be down with it. I feel like you just can't have contradictory energies so much. Some people do have trouble with contradictory elements. Like some people have trouble like doing like earth and air or fire and water, that kind of thing. It can cause an imbalance. It can cause instability. And sometimes the desire to work with two opposing elements comes from instability, like a mental or emotional like need for therapy or something, which I hesitate to tell people because I don't want to be like, you're probably just broken. But we all
therapy is good for everybody. Therapy is good for everybody. No one is too good to go see a therapist or a counselor. They're great. I'm gonna out you as being on. Are great. They save lives and they improve your life so much, but only, with the doctor's guidance.
Pharmaceutically prescribed. Mental health is really important. Yeah, mental health is really important. So, I mean, I don't think that it's an indicator that you're mentally unstable if you want to do fire and water or whatever. If you really feel drawn to both, then that's great. But just really pay attention to how it makes you feel. If one of them puts you on edge, or if a certain type of energy makes you feel sick, then that is telling you something. If you are somebody who, like a light element person, and you're attracted to dark element people, like shadow element people, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. It's kind of like a magnet, but you want to be cautious about like sharing energy with them, because you could accidentally and unnecessarily do harm to somebody. That being said, like, a lot of people can handle multiple elements without a problem. Some people can use all of them without a problem. It's just about like who you are and like what you're comfortable with, and being true to yourself. I think forcing yourself to use all of the elements is silly, but also like forcing yourself to stay away from the others just because you're using one or two is also silly. You know, don't shit on yourself. Don't get stuck in what you should or should not do as a witch. People probably want a lot more like definite rules from me, but I'm not going to give them.
Well, I like that it's not definite rules, because it goes back to it's a very personal thing, and people change over time. Like when we first met, we were both doing like community theater in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, and now we're in two separate states doing completely different things than we were doing then. So like people change, and it makes sense that like your magic changes with what you learn from like what's happening in society, what like your needs are. Those are going to change with time. So it makes sense. Sorry to hijack your thing with go see a counselor. Even if you think you're fine, go see a counselor. But yeah, they're great. Here's a thing, because people are different, and unfortunately there are some really terrible people, like objectively terrible people, who might also do magic.
Yeah.
How do you protect yourself in general, and how do you protect yourself from other witches specifically?
Okay, so the two easiest ways to protect yourself, in my opinion, are to get really good with energy magic and create an energy shield, like a barrier, if you will. And that can protect you from negative energy from unsuspecting people, just like people you work with who are shitheads or whatever, who don't realize that they're projecting badness on you. But it can also help protect you from like people who purposely mean you harm. Those shields can be hard to maintain if you're not used to working with energy magic, which is why I recommend it, because you need to practice. And at first, when you start putting a shield up like that, I've got a video, I'll put it down below. When you first start putting a shield up like that, you'll put it up and then forget about it, and it'll drop again. So you have to learn how to maintain it, and do so without thinking about it all the time. There are numerous ways to do that. You can fuel it with your element. You can fuel it with just like the energy from the earth. You can ask your spirit guides to help you. That is one that I love doing. I put up my own energy shield, and then I ask both of my animal spirits to add their specific, they have specific things that they're really good at, and so I ask them to do those specific things. And it's interesting because I'm a pretty visual person, and so I can kind of see like my energy barrier go up, and then I kind of see like a lattice work from one, and then kind of like a smoke screen from another, and it's like just multiple layers of protection. If people are comfortable working with angels, you can ask angels. There are incantations all over the internet, but you can ask angels to cover you in like literally millions of layers of protective light and love, and you know, they'll do it if that's something that's in your practice. You can also like enchant a crystal and keep it in your pocket, or wear it as like a necklace. You can use a pentacle, or like I have an ankh. Different materials conduct energy differently. Crystals and metals seem to be the best for protection. I think gold is really good for protection, and I found that quartz crystals in general are good because you can purpose them to do anything. Quartz crystals are like having a blank slate to start with. They're amazing, and they're cheap. So like there's a billion types of crystals out there, and they all have different properties. But if you can get your hands on a quartz crystal and then purpose it to do what you want it to do, it'll do pretty much anything. It won't do bad things. You really can't use one to hex somebody, but Smoky quartz has the property of absorbing negative energy and filtering it.
I keep one in my pillowcase.
That's a great thing to do. I have one on my desk that I just...
Ooh, that's a shiny rock.
Yeah. That is, I mean, and those are general protective things that I think everybody should do. It's like, you know, making sure that you've got a fence around your property. It's really important. If you think you're being targeted by something specific, that's deeper territory. The measures that you take at that point really depend on what you think you're being targeted by, what it is, and also whether or not you have help.
Okay, cool. So here's a question that I didn't think of it until we were chatting, because you've got to the end of my list. So,
yay!
Congratulations. You talk a lot about different cultures, and as two white ladies, it can, I think it's really, as two white ladies, it's like, could you please speak about, oh yeah, my skin's literally bleaching in with the white of my lamp, which is fun. Like, touch on cultural appropriation versus appropriation, because like, I know spirit guides are traditionally like indigenous, and voodoo hoodoo is usually like it's ingrained in the Black culture. And so like, how do you bridge wanting to incorporate those things and appreciate them and promote them without negating the fact that they come from typically communities that are typically taken advantage of?
Yeah. Okay. So white culture sucks, and you're right. We're pretty pale, so we don't know. I would encourage discussion about this topic in the comments. Comments help because of the YouTube algorithm, but also I think it's really important for us to talk about things like this that are really important. So if you have a cultural practice or are interested in cultural practices and have questions about that, or an opinion about ways that people can respectfully approach your cultural practice, then please leave those tips for us in the comments down there. I think it's really important to be respectful to the culture itself, first of all. So recognizing where something comes from and learning how it was developed. For example, you mentioned voodoo and hoodoo. They're very different practices, and they're not the same. And a lot of people use them interchangeably. So learning the difference, first of all, is really important. There are different regions that voodoo specifically came from. So there's Afro-Caribbean voodoo, and then there's Santeria, which is South American, which is a similar practice, but with very different like cultural changes. It's Latin American, and they are similar but not the same. And then there's like Haitian voodoo as well. These are integral to people's lives. They came out of pain and suffering, slavery. It came from people trying to stay alive and do what they knew how to do best for themselves without getting killed. So you'll find that there are a lot of Catholic saints used to represent the different voodoo spirits, the Loa. And a lot of that is because slaves were, like, for example, in, I believe Haiti, the slave masters were Catholic, most of them. The Christian denomination was Catholicism. So they used the deities, the Catholic saints, as masks for their deities. And so they could light candles for those saints as a way of honoring their deities without the, without their masters.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
But without
without getting murdered for, you know, living their practice and their culture and religion. So
yeah, and like African root work, I mentioned earlier, it came here as well, and doesn't have a religious association, but is often practiced by people who have like a somewhat Christian association because of its reverence for life and just like the divine entity that is the creator. If you believe in the creator, root work comes from Black people not having the money to hire the same types of doctors that like rich white people can or could. So like a lot of it is like fertility stuff, health stuff, healing herbs, and then it does go deeper like into divination and like witchcraft and graveyard dirt and stuff like that. But you would go to like an elder or a practiced like woman or man who like a midwife or something, and you might get some of these solutions from them. Like modern medicine is just not accessible. Modern medicine, I mean, we're talking about like hundreds of years of cultural change and war and disease and religion and stuff that just goes into, and that's just some of the ones that have come here from like the South and from Africa. That's not even talking about like Native American cultures, the like northern like tribal, like Scandinavian cultures, the way that Christianity and Catholicism have morphed, the Druids, the Celts, like Brujeria from like Mexico, the gods and traditions from like the Hawaiian Islands, and I mean it just
well, there's a whole lot, and there's a lot to learn from, I think, different cultures, and it's amazing and you want to learn it, but I think it was just worth discussing, like, how can we appreciate without appropriating and not being bad?
I guess to get back like around to the point, like you want to learn the history as much as you can, approach things humbly, not in a self-flagellating way, but in a I am human, I am imperfect, and I'm here to learn kind of way. If there is someone that you can respectfully ask to share their stories with you or to share guidance, like that's an amazing way to approach it. Finding books that are written by people who are culturally like a part of like they're like from that culture, books on Native American medicine that are written by Native Americans, not necessarily by like white people that studied it. Like it's important to write things down. I'm not knocking white authors. I'm just saying like you can approach these things with respect and acknowledge where they come from. So if someone comes to you and they're like, hey, will you do a psychic reading for me or whatever, it's important to let them know, like, I'm going to be using like voodoo spirits and shells to divine this, or like I'm going to be using I have spirit guides that came from in my ancestors that came from this tribe, and this tribe, and I'm going to ask them for their help to divine this thing for you, or I specifically work with angels, are you okay with that? So it's important to not acting like you made this shit up and like claiming it as your own. Like just act like every religion and every culture and every type of witchcraft has a copyright on it, and you need to cite your sources, I guess, and give credit where credit is due.
That's excellent. Cool. Sorry to wrangle that one in, but I was like, oh, I should ask.
I'm glad you did. It's something that I've obviously struggled with because
yeah. Well, and it's like if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't get talked about. So
yeah,
like,
well, and we have a really good opportunity to do that because we have the experience of being women, and so we understand what it means to be expected not to speak, maybe. but we also have the experience of being privileged and having an easier life because of, you know, our skin color, or, you know, the jobs our parents had, type of money that, you know, we might have had growing up, and maybe the country that, you know, we were born in. And so being able to help for people who maybe can't is something that we can do.
Well, there's that, and then I think there's also the added of like, it shouldn't always be on those being taken advantage of to say, hey, stop taking advantage of me. I think that's like kind of a small thing we could do, like, let's stop taking advantage of others, and you could still appreciate it. You could still like want to learn and want to like grow as a person. One thing that I've seen a whole lot is just like solid ownership, and that's why I like your practice, is because it's very like how you feel, it's intuitive, it's inclusive, it's accessible, it's literally anyone can do it. And because it doesn't have that you own this one thing, it's you're doing this thing and you're asking for permission and you're asking for help and you're constantly learning. And if you don't know a thing, then yeah, it might not go the way you thought, but like you can always ask. And I think that accessibility is a huge thing. So
we can just be decent people. We can, it's not like it's not so much effort to just be a decent person. And I think that people think it is. I think that people think that like standing up for what's right means you have to like organize protests and stuff. And I think it's great that that is a thing. Like protesting is important, but like we can just be honest. Yeah. That's really simple.
Just like how there are different types of magic for different kinds of people, there are different ways to stand up for each other for different kinds of people. Like I'm a person that will riot in the street and will protest, but I have a friend who's like, no, I'm an introvert. I like my space. I don't want to be in large crowds. But if I had to like hide someone to like keep their family safe in my basement, you bet I'd do that. You bet I would do that. And she would. So and then there are people who are really great about like doing phone chains or calling their senator, or there's something for literally everyone. And then there are also people who are really good at talking to people on the opposite side of the spectrum and have the patience for that and have like the emotional strength for that. There's literally something for everyone, just like there's some sort of witchcraft for everybody, and some sort of science for everybody, and some sort of shiny rock for everybody. Shiny rock.
Shiny rocks and science.
And magic.
And magic.
Look at my shiny rock. It is large.
Wait, can't see it.
Look at my shiny rock. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, the nice guy at the hippie store was like, oh, you want this shiny rock? Then you should check out this shiny rock. And I was like, that is a shiny rock. He was like, yeah, it's good for inspiring stuff. And I'm like, ooh, okay. And then this shiny rock was like, pick me. I was like, okay, shiny rock. And now this is my shiny rock.
A lot of people actually ask me how to pick their tools, and I always tell them like I do it intuitively. A lot of people don't know what that means, but like sometimes it really is like you're looking at rocks and one of them is like, it's me. Yeah. And that's the one.
Yeah, no, I like went into the little shop and I was like, I want to try getting some shiny rocks. And I looked at all the little rocks and I thought I wanted to get like one of 5 different ones that I had like researched. And I didn't want any of those because they weren't shiny enough for me. Then I saw this shiny rock and I was like, that's a nice shiny rock. Can I see that shiny rock? And so I got this shiny rock. He was like, oh, you should check out this shiny rock. And I was like, these shiny rocks are very shiny. And I was like, ooh, I like this one. And so I got this one. Rocks. Many years I will have a nest of shiny rocks. And that is how I will attract a female.
Yeah.
In fact, that is how I attracted a female. Had a nest of shiny rocks. That's not true. I didn't have any of my shiny rocks when I attracted my female.